Hello, welcome to another episode of Scuttlebutt. I'm Nick. I'm here with Vic,
Hello.
William,
Howdy.
and we've got Nancy in house today.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
All
this really is a full house. Last week we thought it was a full house. Now it's a full house.
We're a packed house today,
Yeah,
that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
It's a party.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here.
All right, so Nancy is here today because she was part of the interview with Chaplain Captain Rabbi Mendy Stern.
Not just a part, she was instrumental in
Yeah,
getting this
she brought him in.
interview lined up.
And just a little peek behind the curtain on this one. We wanted to have the rabbi in-house.
Yeah.
At the last second, we had to reschedule and did things over Teams. So that's why there's some parts in the thing might sound like a little wonky, but it was an adventure getting him on. Nancy
Yep.
was part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nancy is
Yes.
here now.
I
Yeah,
am.
and just for anybody listening from a U.S. Army.mil account, you're going to have an issue linking up with teams outside of a U.S. Army.mil on the other end.
Blame the
Lesson
Army.
learned.
Always.
So much for Army
Always.
Strong.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Army strong, not
Not their network. Or maybe their network security is strong because the team
internally. It's probably really strong.
Actually,
Yeah.
it's probably the problem. It's too strong. Like,
Yeah, they are.
Anyway, well, you guys talked to Mendy for about an hour and 15 minutes, so let's get right into what we were excited about in the interview. So, Nancy, you were there. You're here now. I want to get your voice.
Oh, her face. She did not
Yeah.
know she's leading off.
Yeah, I didn't. You didn't tell me I was going to be the leadoff hitter. Well, first of all, good news for Chaplain Captain Rabbi Mendy Stern. He is
Is
being
n-
promoted
no
to
longer
Major.
Chaplain
Yeah.
Captain. He is now.
So that's
Chaplain
exciting
Major,
news for
yeah.
him. And I guess the reason, well, I know the reason I was a big part of putting the interview together is because he is my rabbi and an amazing rabbi, amazing speaker, a great spiritual leader. And so I was really happy that he was willing to come on the podcast and talk to us and then talk to all of you.
And this sort of fell into our laps. I mean, we originally had someone else lined up, and it was basically going to be for Christians,
Right.
which is great. I mean, we wanted to talk chaplaincy, but if we're talking for chaplains, and we're also one of the reoccurring themes to this has been religious pluralism. To have a rabbi, I mean, it was like super, and especially a superstar like Chaplain Major Stern. Yeah.
and also someone who is like very knowledgeable on the Four Chaplains and knew like,
Yeah.
a lot of the intimate details
Yeah.
about it. Was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I first heard
Learn
this.
you something, yeah.
The story of the Four Chaplains was not from Rabbi Stern, but from a previous rabbi at the congregation at Fort Belvoir Army Base. Heard that story maybe 15 years ago at a Friday night service,
Yeah.
and I was awestruck and inspired, and so I'm really happy that a lot more people are going to be able to hear that
Yeah.
story.
And thank you so much because, I mean, you did basically all the legwork to make this happen. So, and it was sort of a last minute deal. So this is really great. This is a real treat, and hopefully our listeners
Yeah.
enjoy it as much as we
And did
do.
you know that he was such a trailblazer when he was just your rabbi?
I did.
You
I
did?
did know that.
We had to.
Okay.
Just look at him, right?
I did. Well,
He's got a little something extra.
when we heard who our new rabbi was going to be, I immediately went to the Google and looked him up and to
Yeah.
find everything out I could about him, and
Yeah, you'll hear in the interview, but it's more than just his moxie
Yeah.
that stands out.
yeah.
Anyway, what stood out to you, William? What did you like think
Well,
about Mendy?
I like the entire interview. I think I've touched on it. Like, I love how he's all like very like knowledgeable on the Four Chaplains. But I think for Scuttlebutt history, it's our first cliffhanger. Like he says, he dropped a very interesting potential story and says he might come back. So I think, if any of our Scuttlebutt listeners want more of our dear Rabbi Stern, please email us, message us. I mean, obviously he's an interesting dude. We're gonna try and get him back anyways, but. Your support is always welcome.
You're not supposed to tell people the cliffhanger is coming, William.
Well, he didn't tell what the
didn't
cliffhanger
tell the
is.
cliffhanger.
Storytelling 101.
It's
He
like
just said-
he's piqued their
It's a
interest now to listen to the
surprise.
whole
Yeah, it's not
episode.
a
Well
spoiler,
done.
not a
I like
spoiler.
it.
Yeah, I thought that was a good carrot dangling. Yeah.
That's not how it works, guys. It's not-
It's like a teaser on the front of a magazine,
I
right?
like it
Exactly.
a lot.
a
yeah.
teaser at the front of the mag. The story is not concluded.
Yeah, it's like when you're watching a trailer and then everyone's eyes get big and they gasp, and then it's like,
Oh, you know what that is? It's The Grade with Liam Neeson, where in the trailer they showed the post-credit scene of him fighting the wolf.
I didn't see that.
Oh.
But
Spoiler.
Liam Neeson against the wolf.
The
I'm
entire
in.
movie. I know everybody was in. It's not in the movie, guys. It's like
Wow.
Bummer. Well, this one
Anyway.
will be. This is
the movie's like 12 years old now, so it's okay to spoil it a little bit.
Okay. Liam Neeson's in one of my favorite movies of all time, Kroll. Do you guys remember Kroll?
I did not see
No.
that.
Oh
don't
man,
know.
yeah. Anyways, check out Kroll too if you're into Liam Neeson.
All right. Well, I appreciated the look we got at the life of someone working at the Arlington National Cemetery.
Yeah.
That was a little eye-opening, and it really, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Like, it's just you don't think about it from the outside looking in that inside out, he is burying Silver Star winners. He is burying people who might have done something beyond the military. Like, it was pretty awesome to hear about that. Vic, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, what resonated with me, and I hope resonates with all our listeners, is his call to action. He was in Manhattan during 9/11. I mean, I think he says he saw the buildings being hit, and he just knew that he had to go do something. And it wasn't like him stepping outside of himself, like, oh, I'm going to grab a rifle and fall in line. He did within, and regardless of your faith group or your belief system, whether it's Yahweh or Jesus or Buddha or Allah or whatever, or the universe, whatever it is that's calling you to do good, it doesn't mean you have to step outside of yourself to do that. There are many, 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 many ways that you can contribute to the goodness. And what resonates with Marines, you run to the sound of chaos, and you don't have to just sit idly by and wish and wonder how can I contribute. You can just get into it. For the USAID folks, or State Department folks, for people working nonprofits, working with immigrants, with displaced persons. There's a lot of suffering when these sorts of things happen, and so I think Rabbi Major Stern is really epitomized that. Like, he stayed within his lane, but yet it's doing still, like, to this day, like, so much good.
Agree
So.
with that.
All right, and this was episode 4 of the Chaplain series, or the 4th interview.
Yeah.
Not counting any mini pods or anything happening on the sides. So
Good closer.
good closer,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think that Rabbi Stern just put himself right on the top of our "we want him back" list.
Yeah, he's going to have
So.
to, maybe we get him and Colonel Tim Howe, like, in the ring, some bare knuckle kumite to see who's going to be the champ of recurring guests.
So, well, Rabbi Stern has to get back on at least one more time to even be in the competition. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So, you guys learn much during the learn much doing the Chaplain episodes?
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like maybe there's a call to action for me somewhere down the road. So this is really resonating on a personal level.
All right, yeah, talking to 4 pretty amazing chaplains back to
Mhm.
back to back to back like that, I could imagine would.
It's hard not to feel
Yeah.
something else beyond yourself here.
And just in studying military history, there's also like a lot of common myths and motifs about what chaplains in their place in it. So it's definitely great to hear from like their perspective, and B like in like a more recent context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that. I thought it was really inspiring and interesting that they have such different backgrounds, but all play such a vital role in our military, and like you said, Vic, with serving.
Yeah, and they're all in different like positions around chaplaincy right now. With like Mendy still actively doing it, Bill Kemmer doing the Four Chaplains Foundation, and just chaplaining like all
Yeah.
over the place, like never giving up the call.
Yeah. Like,
So-
I mean, you think like Rear Admiral Baker, for example. I mean, 16th Chaplain of the Marine Corps. You'd think that guy's kicking his feet up now and chilling. Nope. He's in the biz, man. Like, he's getting into it. He's still, in that whole. He's going out to the wheel. He's not people coming
Yeah,
to
and
the
like-
hub sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and like Chaplain Driscoll's still working to improve himself.
Yeah, he's still a hospital chaplain
Yeah,
now.
like-
They're
Like really focusing on well-being and wellness and stuff. So it's pretty exciting. It's definitely humbling, and I am excited that we did this. That being said, 4 interviews in a month, Vic. You got it in you to do it again anytime soon?
for show.
right, no, we're going to slow down on that. All right, well, without any further ado, here is past Vic and Nancy talking to Chaplain, then Captain, Rabbi Stern.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
The SS Dorchester, a civilian liner converted for military service, left New York on January 23, 1943, en route to Greenland, carrying approximately 900 personnel and crew. It was part of a convoy of 3 ships escorted by Coast Guard cutters Tampa, Escanaba, and Comanche. During the early morning hours of February 3rd, off Newfoundland in the North Atlantic, the vessel was torpedoed by the German submarine U-223. Chaplains George Fox, Alexander Good, Clark Poling, and John Washington helped the men board lifeboats and gave up their own life jackets when the supply ran out. The chaplains joined arms, said prayers, and sang hymns as they went down with the ship.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to an interview that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, as we are now wrapping up our Four Chaplains series, and we've been exploring the myriad of aspects of chaplaincy and the military chaplain corps. We are just so honored today to be here with Chaplain Captain Rabbi Mendy Stern. Sir, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and to talk about the Four Chaplains and their impact and inspiration to me and to generations of chaplains that came after them.
That absolutely, and I'm so happy to hear that that their service and sacrifice was an inspiration for you. Just for those who are just now joining the series, the Four Chaplains, the immortal chaplains, the immaculate chaplains, were the 4 chaplains who were making transit with soldiers heading into Europe during World War II on the USAT Dorchester. It was attacked by a submarine, started to sink, and the 4 chaplains, in getting people off the boat, were actually gave up their own life jackets so that everybody can make it off, and then were together as it sank. And those 4 chaplains were a Catholic chaplain, Protestant chaplain, or 2 Protestant chaplains, and a rabbi. And rabbi's name was Alexander David Good. And so that's why this is such a treat for us to have another active duty rabbi chaplain who's serving currently in uniform. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, just if you could give us, you could be as brief or be as long-winded as you want, but if you could tell us a little bit about your background and where you currently are, and just sort of how you came into being a military chaplain.
So, interestingly enough, as you mentioned, the 4 chaplains, I do want to take a quick moment,
Please,
and add some details that my research brought out, and I found it actually quite amazing. And so, on January 23rd, 1943, the Dorchester left New York Harbor, and it was on the way to Europe to support the Allies during World War II. One of the things specifically that people need to understand is how many people fit on those boats. There were over 900 people on the ship. And
it was a converted cruise liner, correct?
Cruise liner, that's correct.
It was a converted cruise liner, and it was manned by merchant marines and Navy sailors. So it was like a mixture of personnel and that operated it. And in February 1943, the convoy Sierra Golf 19 left Newfoundland, bound for the Army Command Base in southern Greenland. Now, there were 6 ships in that convoy: the Dorchester, 2 other merchant ships and their escorts, and Coast Guard cutters Comanche, Escanaba, and Tampa. What's interesting about it is that as they were traveling, the Coast Guard cutters detected a submarine, and They knew that they're in dangerous waters because of the German U-boats and the history that they had. They knew, the intelligence told them that it's dangerous. And with the Dorchester only 150 miles from its destination, the captain ordered the men to sleep in their clothing and life vests.
Yep.
However, as we know, young soldiers do what young soldiers do, and many soldiers slept in the ship without, either without their clothing or without life vests and so on. So specifically, right after midnight, about 12:55 or so, in the darkness of night, the Dorchester was torpedoed by a German U-boat, and that German U-boat identity actually is known. It's a Uniform 223, and it was a direct hit on the starboard side below the waterline. And the damage was so severe that the ship lost power, and there was an inadequate steam to even sound the whistle on the ship, to notify people to abandon the ship. So the hit also knocked out power and prevented the crew from sending a radio distress signal. And no rockets or flares were launched to alert the escorts. However, what's interesting is that the Coast Guard cutters, the Comanche, saw the flash of the explosion and responded to rescue 97 survivors. And the Escabana, the other Coast Guard cutter, rescued 133 survivors, while the third one, the Tampa, carried on to escort the other ships that were in the convoy. So just to kind of imagine what's going on the Dorchester, 902 men on board, 230 of them were saved. That's all.
And as far as I understand it, because of the sacrifice of the Four Chaplains, what they say, medically, many of those guys, because of the cold water, would have died were it not for the inspiration of the Four Chaplains that gave them hope that they could make it. That's how you understand it as well?
Actually, I heard from a witness that survived, from a survivor. When I was stationed in New York, I had the opportunity to hear from a survivor.
Wow.
And he actually said, and I'm quoting this, "I could hear men crying, pleading, and praying. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going." And then another sailor, I read in a book, that another sailor tried to re-enter his cabin, but Rabbi Good stopped him. And when the sailor said he wants to get his gloves, the Rabbi Good told him, "Never mind." And he gave the sailor his own gloves just to get off the Dorchester quickly. By this time, the Dorchester was already taking on water, and the Four Chaplains were right there by the storage lockers of the life vests, and they were giving out life vests. And at one point, when they ran out, they took off their own life vests and gave it to the soldiers and sailors that were on the ship. Now, you asked me a question before, what's my inspiration from this story? So the heroic actions of the Four Chaplains, in my opinion, they constitute one of the purest spiritual and ethical acts that a person could make. The chaplains exemplify the very creed that they pledge to protect. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. And when they gave their life vests, Chaplain Good did not search for a Jew. Chaplain Washington did not seek a Catholic, nor did Chaplains Fox and Poling call out for a Protestant. They simply gave their life jackets to the next man in line. And as the ship went down, survivors in the rafts could see the Four Chaplains' arms linked and braced against the slanting deck, their voices in prayer. That night, Reverend Fox, Rabbi Good, Reverend Poling, and Father Washington passed the ultimate test. In doing so, they became an enduring example of extraordinary faith, courage, and selflessness. This is my inspiration. So when we talk about the Four Chaplains, this is what the serves to me as a inspiration and a driving force. What is my purpose in life? Why did I join the Army? So to answer that question, I know it's a little long-winded. A little bit about me is I was born in Israel, and my father, who still serves as a rabbi now in New York, but my family has been rabbis for many generations, and I wanted to continue the link to the next generation. In my early teens, my family moved from Israel to America, and while in rabbinical college in New Jersey, uh, 9/11 happened, and I recall standing on the roof of the college and watching. I actually saw the towers fall, and that fed the flame of wanting to serve. The patriotic flame of wanting to serve our country, and since then it's been burning stronger than ever.
Well, that is an amazing story. And how old were you then when you were at rabbinical school?
How old was I? 20.
Okay. And then, but you didn't raise your right hand until you were 29, correct?
That's correct. So I actually started with service to the community by serving as a volunteer medic on an ambulance, and while working in a rabbinical school, teaching the next generation as well. And with the downturn of the economy, the school had to shut down, and this is in 2007, 8, and so on, is when I applied to the. So first of all, I worked in New York City in finance, and I couldn't volunteer during that time because of the long hours, and I was actually quite worked up about it. While I made decent money, I was not satisfied with it, and I wanted to serve and help people. So when I heard that the Army was recruiting rabbis, I jumped on the opportunity, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So, I mean, you've really felt the call for quite some time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was inspired by one of my teachers and mentors, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who in his teachings encouraged his disciples to become ordained rabbis and to go out in the world and serve communities at large. Not to remain insular in the comfort of the major Jewish communities, but rather to go out and be essentially lamplighters.
Yeah, and so that's a really interesting. And I apologize if any of my questions or comments come off as overly ignorant. But one of the reoccurring themes we've had in this series is this sort of sense of calling, a sense of service, juxtaposed, at least from the Christian standpoint, of pastoral leadership. And we had Rear Admiral Alan Baker on the show, and he wrote the book Foundations of Chaplaincy. And in there, he uses the metaphor of the hub and wheel. And for Christian ministerial leadership, there is what we all understand is sort of everybody on the wheel comes in through the spokes to the hub, which is, the church or the parish. But that chaplaincy completely breaks that paradigm, and it's now going out. So the hub is now the wheel, and the chaplains are called to then go out. Is that the same within the Jewish faith? Is there a dichotomy there, a push-pull, or is there a lot more of a sense of going out to shepherd rather than having the sheep come to the barn, sort of thing?
So, to answer that, we have to understand a little bit of how some Jewish theology for a moment.
Yeah. Sure.
So Jewish theology is actually that we are going out to be available to serve as essentially as a lighthouse, where if someone is seeking, they could connect to us. So, for instance, if a Jewish soldier is out there and they want to connect to Judaism, we are there to help them connect with that. We do not go out to seek or to convert anyone to Judaism. In the same sense, we also have to understand that Judaism as a whole, and this is I heard recently a rabbi speak about it on a series and on a podcast, and it was fascinating. He used an interesting story, and he says that he met a priest, and the priest asked him, isn't it so sad that Jews are being persecuted so much? And the rabbi looked at him and says, "We are here." And he said, the priest goes, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it's inevitable that the longest lasting religion, the religion that has been around for 4,000 years, inevitably he's going to be persecuted the most because others come and go. Yeah, we don't see the Greeks right now. We don't hear of, so many other people that were, and there were significant nations back in the day. We don't hear of them as major powerhouses. Yet here we are. So were we persecuted? Yeah, but we were also the longest lasting religion and nation. So that said, we have to also understand and see it from the perspective of you spoke about the hub and spoke of the wheel. Judaism is a direct connection with God. A person, while there is a community to help the person grow and in their connection with God and so on, they do not need it. They have a direct connection, the same way that a child has with a father. The connections, even if they're not home, they're still connected. Being home gives them the comfort, gives them the connection, but they do not need to be home in order to be still a child of the Father. So a Jew, while it's encouraged that they connect through a community and so on, they do not necessarily need it. They could have a direct connection with God.
Interesting perspective.
That's really beautifully put, Rabbi.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so to that sense then, so as one of only 13 active duty Jewish chaplains in the Army, there has to be a sense in one hand of just this wonderful accomplishment, but you've got to be a really busy guy. Can you sort of walk us through sort of a day in the life of Rabbi Stern?
So let me start with a little bit of an understanding that every tour of duty is unique for me in its own right. So, while I could share with you a lot of stories and, different experiences, at the moment I'm humbled to serve as a Jewish chaplain at Arlington National Cemetery and the Military District of Washington. And as I was told by the historian, I did not verify it myself, but I'm the first active duty Army rabbi to be assigned to Arlington. So to get to be in the presence of heroes and to honor them in their final moments here on earth is a humbling experience. So from that perspective, on a typical day, I start around 5 a.m. and I do PT, physical training. And after sunrise, I pray the morning prayers, get ready for work. And in my current assignment, I arrive at work between 7 and 8 in the morning to prepare for the day. Everything from the daily schedule to operations, logistics, anything related to the Army chaplain's office, operations-wise, I prepare in the morning and I get started. My NCO arrives around the same time, and the NCO's job, my non-commissioned officer's job, is to inspect the Arlington ladies' escorts, funeral, the uniforms, and to ensure that the funeral services occur as planned, the vehicles leave on time, everyone is where they need to be at the right place, right time, right uniform, and so on. And then from 9 till around 1500, we conduct funeral services, and the entire team, the Army team, will perform up to, let me rephrase that, the military team, because it's including the Air Force and Navy. So we conduct up to 30 services per day at a rate of approximately 5 services per hour. And sometimes we have to go from one service to the next, and it's essential. We have to keep this in mind all along, that we make every family feel individually respected and appreciated. And although there may be many funeral services happening at the same time, it's essential to make every family feel valued and they have our undivided focus.
Yeah.
So in between services, we still have staff officer duties. command briefings, counseling, coordination of religious services, preparation of religious education and activities, all of these other responsibilities that fall on us. Now, most days, I try to leave the office in time for dinner. And realistically, though, I conduct Hebrew school on Wednesdays and attend meetings that cause me to leave the office late. So let's not forget that also in middle of all of this, I also serve as one of the subject matter experts on religious accommodation requests, and I respond regularly to requests from across the military, not just Army. So yeah, it could get busy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Go ahead, Nancy.
After a day of conducting funerals and being there for families in that moment of grief, do you find that draining at the end of the day?
So most days, actually, when I leave, my 20-30 minute drive home is kind of my decompression. And on days that I conduct funerals, I'll tell you that I'm in awe. I'm I'll just give you an example. I'm going to go off script for a moment, but I got to bury, I'm just using this as an example, a hero, a gentleman that in World War II got 2 Silver Stars. And he, in my opinion, should have been nominated for the Medal of Honor. But he was a humble person. On the one hand. On the other hand, I got to bury a private first class that retired from the Army after World War II or the Korean War. And he was the inventor of the whiteboard.
Oh,
Wow.
And here I get to do the final prayers for him, to recite the Kaddish, to the memorial prayers, to honor him. I got to bury people, there was a woman from try to remember the name of the college, but she was the champion, the first female dean of a major university. She was a trailblazer to get women into these high academic jobs, and here I'm getting to honor her. So I'm just using this as an example. I'm in awe more than I feel drained. Are there days that I feel drained? Yes, but we have ways to handle that through talking with mentors, talking with peers, and having support from people that are around us.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful sentiment in your approach, because it is so true that no matter how many you may see within an hour, within a day, within the year, for those family, that's the one. And to be at Arlington, and to, like you said, being late, having, in the final moments of these heroes' time on earth, and to be laying them to rest. Yeah, it's such a good reminder, I think, just for us too, that like these moments in time matter, and that people's stories matter, and that the legacy that they leave is something that needs to be honored, whether we're standing in line at a grocery store, we're barking at each other in traffic, or we're laying someone in their final rest. And so I really appreciate you sharing sort of a day in the life of Rabbi Stern with us. Shifting gears a little bit, and I think you alluded to this, and I know it's multifaceted so to say, like, hey, this one thing is what chaplains do, but I guess sort of in your world according to Rabbi Stern, like, how do you feel about the role of the chaplain corps?
So let's understand kind of foundational. The chaplain corps' primary mission is to provide religious services and support, and to advise the command on religion, morals, ethics, and morale. And the chaplain corps motto is nurture the living, care for the wounded, and honor the fallen. So tying it all together, Title Code mandates us to provide religious services, and Army regulations add, obviously, the advising the command on matters, as mentioned, religion, morals, and so on. So this is for me, and kind of the world according to Stern, is that our role as chaplains is to embody this and live this, our responsibility to ensure the freedom of religion for every soldier, or every service member, to ensure that a service member that wants to practice is able to practice, and a service member that doesn't want to practice is not forced to practice. The freedom of religion is not just to make sure that a Jew is able to practice Judaism, but also to ensure that when I have a non-Jewish service member, that they get to do what they need to do, whether it's practice another religion or have no religion at all.
And so, when then do you feel like some of the aspects of being a chaplain in the military? So you're sort of in many ways you're wearing multiple hats, right? And so you've got your commitment to your faith group, you've got your commitment to your unit, you've got your commitment to the service. Where do those naturally intersect, and where do you see sometimes that there's some tension?
So chaplains are with the troops. This is kind of a little bit of a difference between the Army, Air Force, and the Navy. So in the Army, the chaplains are where the troops are. So we are assigned to battalions and higher. So if we go with our battalions wherever our troops are. So if they are in a field exercise, we are in the field. We're with them in the field exercise. If they deploy, we deploy. We build a connection and trust through our, with our troops through shared trials and experiences. So that said, chaplains in general must balance the community's religious needs and the unit's mission, and strike a balance between the two. Just as a side note, our orders actually dictate that. So our orders assign us to a unit, but they have a line that we support the garrison religious support, the religious office. So our responsibilities dual-hatted from the beginning. And for me specifically, as there are only 13 of us Jewish chaplains on active duty in the Army, there's usually only one Jewish chaplain on any given base. And this requires the rabbi to ensure the continuity of religious services, even when we participate with our unit in drills and exercises. So one such story, and I just want to share a quick story about this. Is, in 2015, coming up to the holiday of Purim, the festival celebrating the story of Esther and the saving of the Jews from annihilation in the time of the Persian king, my unit, my battalion, was scheduled to conduct a 2-week live fire exercise, and I had to coordinate to return to the garrison for 24 hours to conduct the holiday services and then return right to the field for the duration of the exercise. And I must share, it was in the middle of a blizzard, and it's and so on. It's all the moving parts, and we still had to coordinate to ensure that the services happened both in the garrison and within the unit.
Man,
so, where were you at the time? Where were you assigned?
I was assigned to the military police battalion in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Yeah, so you're very used to being busy, then, is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
So I guess to shift then into maybe a more theological discussion, we see you've given us a good example of where the practice of chaplaincy, how it what it looks like, but how about theologically, where you're having to now also balance the theology of your faith group and then sort of the ethos of the military, and especially like you were talking about, you're in a military police unit conducting live fire exercises, not because it's fun to go out and shoot guns, because you're preparing for real world situations. So is it a nice and neat marriage, or are there sometimes some challenges in that relationship?
So before I answer that question directly, I just want to add one little thing, and this will kind of build a picture. So chaplains serve as a whole. Chaplains as a whole serve as a lighthouse in a stormy sea. So in the middle of the chaos and the craziness that's happening, the rush, exercises and deployments and so on, chaplains serve as a lighthouse to help troops navigate the rough waters. And one day it might mean that we are counseling a young couple on marriage, relationships, and the next hour it may mean providing grief counseling to someone else.
So as the spiritual advisor, as someone who is there with the troops, and this could be, any myriad of issues where the service is either explicitly tasking or is there is a sort of an implicit add-on with any of the, I guess to highlight a sort of obvious one, like, for example, violence. And as your troopers are wrestling with and coming to terms with the ferocity of the violence that they're called to bring upon, where does the chaplain fit into that, understanding that many of the faith groups that provide chaplain services also have a doctrinal or a theological apprehension towards the sort of the use of violence and the consequences spiritually and morally to the use of violence.
So the Torah instructs us how to serve in an army, and that national service is a foundational rite of passage to adulthood. This service helps shape the attitudes of caring for one another and of being selfless. Service to community service or national service teaches young adults to think beyond themselves and focus on the greater good, appreciating the delicate freedom we have. As we know, unfortunately, in America, less than 1% of the population serves in the armed forces.
Exactly.
So, on another note, most wars historically have been about religious theology and practices, and we cannot separate what we believe in from what we practice. Therefore, we must adhere to the ethics. We must maintain, keep it, the ethics and morals of our theology when we serve in the military. And when a soldier, an officer keeps and lives by the ethics and morals, they're connecting their theology with practice, they impact positively the lives of others. To answer your question about are there conflicts or rough patches within it? So in a number of cases, basic Jewish religious requests, and I'm just going to talk about Judaism in this case. Now, I'm not going to,
Sure.
Talk about other religions, but it is true also for some other religions that religious requests can be difficult in a military setting to facilitate. And many times the soldiers need to become experts in the religious requests just to be able to exercise a simple practice. So think of it as a civilian, wishing to practice something, any kind of religious rite or holiday or, dress and so on. And within a military setting, they need to request permission to do that. So I see it as, to answer the conflict question, I see it as squandered opportunities for the military, where the military may lose good troops because of the difficulty in facilitating religious practice, worship, as the troops believe. And it also creates animosity within units as the troops see how the command reacts to a request. So they see it and translate it to other aspects in their lives. On the other hand, when we see leaders that are receptive and supporting their troops and genuinely caring, and so through that genuine caring, they open the door for their soldiers to approach them with any issues, and they avoid significant issues and challenges later on.
And this is something that strikes home for you, directly.
Oh, absolutely. I experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. And in multiple ways. I mean, as the chaplain of a unit, you are the key advisor to the commander. I mean, there's only two people that can advise the commander on the welfare of his unit, and that's you and the sergeant major, right? I mean, those are the two key advisors.
And absolutely, and allow me to actually speak for a moment on the various cultures that we have within the military.
Yes, please.
And the approach we currently have. And I want to point out, this is what makes good officers, and separates between the good officers and the, and the average or not so good officers, is how they approach in general the culture that they create within the unit. So, and we should celebrate contributions regardless of who contributes. So we should celebrate our civil rights and diversity by celebrating the unique opportunity we have with each person and their contribution to the team. So every soldier raised their right hand to volunteer their service to our country, period. We should not focus on race. We should not focus on their religion. We should not focus on their minority or not, gender or whatever preferences. We should focus on their actions and the content of their character. We should focus on providing the same leadership and support to individuals based on their behavior, their actions, their character. The same goes for religious accommodation. Leaders should default to approve a religious request. And we will discuss soon the caveat to that, regarding military necessity. But there's no reason that soldiers and their leaders need to fight about it. There's a common ground that could be found. So finally, as a chaplain, I provide counsel and support to every soldier that asks. And in addition, I perform the religious services and activities, providing for others what they need from me. So for instance, if a Christian soldier asks me to officiate their wedding, I refer them, part of my job of advising, I refer them to a Christian chaplain, because marriage is a religious function.
Mm-hmm.
But marriage counseling, on the other hand, relationship counseling and so on, is something that I provide directly to them, regardless of their faith.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you're not just saying no, like you said, your default setting isn't to say no. Like if you're not Jewish, that the answer is no. Is that you're faulting to a position of yes up until a point, and then I will, once I've exceeded the boundaries of my faith group, I will then refer you over to someone that can sort of take the baton and carry you guys through the next level. Is that sort of how it goes?
So if I could give it an analogy, is I'm like an EMT. I'm not a surgeon. So my job is, when it comes to counseling or so on, is I provide the first aid. And then I help the soldiers and I pass them on to someone, whether it's behavioral health, a family life counselor, whatever more, deeper counseling that they need. When it comes to religious practice, I provide them now, the surgeon level, the religious needs that they need. However, when it comes to other faiths, I am, a heart surgeon is not going to go do ankle surgery. They'll refer it to an orthopedic surgeon. An orthopedic surgeon is not going to do heart surgery. So a Jewish chaplain does Jewish services, and a Christian chaplain does Christian services. And even though historically we could see, I shouldn't say historically, correction, Hollywood teaches us that, whether it's MASH or some of the other military series show that a chaplain wears multiple hats and does services for other faiths. That is actually incorrect by doctrine. And the chaplains focus only, religious services only on the faiths that we are. And we refer out and advise the soldiers on getting services from other faiths if they are practicing other faiths.
So I guess then to go back a little bit and to talk about some of your firsthand experiences with the sort of default setting, the desire to find compromise, and to celebrate the diversity that really is sort of the backbone of our military services and the people that join. Can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences firsthand and sort of coming into the service with some challenges and some apprehension and sort of navigating that reluctance for people to necessarily accept the diversity of its members?
So allow me to jump back for a moment and talk about the Four Chaplains and their inspiration. Chaplain Washington, Good, Fox, and Poling, those chaplains. In their actions, they exemplified the resolve and care that a chaplain should have for their troops by giving up their life to save others. In their final heroic act, these four chaplains sacrificed their own lives to save others. And that style, that motto, that leadership inspires me to care for my troops and help those who reach out to me. One of the many times that this happened, and I'll share with you a story, when a rabbi reached out to me telling me that one of his congregants, their child, a soldier serving in the military, posted a suicidal Facebook message. The family feared for the soldier's life. I immediately researched where the soldier was stationed and made the effort to contact the soldier or the unit chaplain, but I wasn't able to. So I looked up the name of the command chaplain and reached out directly to the 06 chaplain, to the colonel, with the situation at hand. And that chaplain immediately handled the situation and even replied back to my chain of command to thank me for intervening. The Torah equates saving a life to saving an entire world. And with that, I would do anything to save a life, and I strive to care for the well-being of my troops above my own needs. So to answer your question, first-hand experiences, good or bad, priority is taking care of the troops. So is there a bad day? Kind of. There's always light at the end of the tunnel and the opportunity for the sun to rise again.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. But on a personal level, though, you gained some national attention in your fight for religious expression. For those, obviously, this being a podcast, not a video series, our listeners may not be aware you have a beard. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of your uniform standards and some of the ultimate, I guess, the ultimate victory that you had in now being a service member, being in the chaplain corps, being allowed to express your religion the way that you have, and then also what that means now? Like, what is the significance overall to your service beyond just fulfilling the calling that you heard so many years ago?
So some of the foundational basis for the belief is that the Torah states that one should not cut the corner of their head nor mutilate the beard. And whilst there are some who wish to interpret the meaning into various leniencies and ways around it, the text is clear as daylight. And I was shocked when the Army wanted me to shave my beard when I volunteered to join the Army, just so that I could request a shaving profile once I completed basic training.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
So for starters, I was not the first to ask for a beard in uniform. I was the first to request to keep my beard when entering the Army. I never shaved my beard in my life. This is the original beard from when it started growing when I was a teenager. Never shaved it, never trimmed it, and so on. So the beard ban on its foundation, and I'm quoting from my case when it was handled when we were working with the military to figure out how I could enter the military. My case stated that the beard ban on its own merit contradicts the law. On the one hand, soldiers come in all shapes and sizes. The Army allows shaving exemptions for medical reasons and some missions, special operations, op 4 in the training exercises,
Sure.
etc. The argument of uniformity, which was the main argument that they tried to argue, is moot, because they're already giving exceptions for other things, which are, by the way, not constitutionally guaranteed. Special operations does not have a First Amendment right, and neither does medical exemptions. And the second argument that they had was regarding the gas masks. So number one is, we have shown repeatedly that there are gas masks that seal with beards. And when I was 9 years old, during the first Gulf War, I lived in Israel, and everyone had gas masks, and my father and my uncle never shaved, and their gas masks sealed. The Scuds were landing. This is real world. We're not talking about training exercise.
Right.
And gas masks sealed just fine. When I went through the CS chamber, the gas chamber in training, and later on in Fort Leonard Wood and in Fort Hood and so on, my mask sealed just fine, and so on. So that's number one. Now, number two is the United States law, the acronym for it is RFRA, actually states and mandates that the government must accommodate religious requests in the least restrictive means. And the standard set under that law would mean that the government can place those with beards in assignments that do not require masks, A, or if there's a will, they could accommodate beards for religious requests without burdening the government. In other words, the religious request, whether it's a beard or something else, can be accommodated in the least restrictive way. There's other ways to figure it out. They do not need to. They did not need to take the most restrictive way, which is ultimately when it was time for me to enter the Army. Ultimately, the Army allowed me to enter with a beard, and I've been serving now for well over 10 years, and have six worldwide missions. 3 of them were combat deployments. Did just fine.
yeah, clearly. But this while you were, so you mentioned a little bit of the DoD adjusting its policy. That's no small feat, as you are well aware, and for those veterans who are listening, know that not often does the DoD acquiesce these sorts of things. So, do you find, like, is that a positive thing, or were you just the squeaky wheel that got the grease?
So, I think it was inevitable. It just happened to be that I was the lucky person in the front of it. But I think it was inevitable because, as mentioned before, the ban itself had no legal standing. And I must point out, while some of my leaders supported me, whether it was during the process of entering the military or even after I entered the military, I did face some resistance from others, and not just for the beard. Unfortunately, I've seen, anti-Semitism. I've seen discrimination. I've seen, and so on. I've seen toxic leaders. So as a whole, though, once leaders take the time to learn and understand the other side, my experience has been that the good leaders change their tune. They change their attitude. They become more accommodating once they understand what, the reasoning and so on. And ultimately, as mentioned before, the character of the person versus their look or their gender or their religious belief.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you found some support then through the Chaplain Corps, not just from within the military apparatus itself?
Yes. Found support from the Chaplain Corps, found support from leadership. I'll just use a quick story. When I first arrived at Fort Leonard Wood, it's a basic training post. There were drill sergeants that raised eyebrows. They want to know how come I had a beard. And once my soldier, I don't know if we could include it officially in the podcast, but one of my soldier was called, and my religious affairs specialist was called in by a drill sergeant from another unit to demand that the drill sergeant told him to make sure that his officer, that his chaplain, is clean shaven. And my soldier did not know what to respond, so he came to me and asked me what he should do. My initial reaction was, hey, here's my waiver, here's my accommodation for my beard, and go show it to him. My battalion sergeant major heard it, and he said, Chaplain, no, your accommodation is yours. Your chain of command are the only ones that could, basically force you to show it or whatever. Anyone else on the outside, you refer them to talk to me. And he turns to my soldier and he sends the soldier to that drill sergeant and tells my soldier, he says, you go tell the drill sergeant that he and his sergeant major should come see me. And that was the last time that anyone really bothered me about the beard in Fort Leonard Wood. And I was stationed there for 3 years. So just using it as an example, I don't know if it's fitting for the podcast and for the theme, but it's kind of to understand the background.
That's our wheelhouse. So yeah, you nailed it. So then this obviously has ripple effects outside of just Rabbi Stern and even within the Army. I mean, now we're talking about many, many faith groups who may have felt like they weren't going to be able to find a role or be able to serve are now able to. Are you seeing some of that there's a positive trend moving forward?
So I do see an opportunity where historically great warriors, and I'm just going to use the example of the Sikhs. As an example, they're historically amazing warriors with fascinating history, where until now, a religious Sikh would have a barrier to entry in the military. Now they have a means and a way to enter. The military is able to recruit and has recruited rabbis into the military. We since I came in, we brought in 7, 8 rabbis with beards to serve in the military, in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the National Guard, active duty Army. So it opens a door for good people to serve without needing to compromise their religious belief. And allow me to talk for a moment,
please,
about this representation with that the Chaplain Corps facilitates, but it's military wide. Diversity and pluralism have different meanings. Pluralism is changing the many to become one. The kind of the theme of the United States, for many one. But at the same time, diversity is a quality of being diverse while remaining true to our individual identity. This is a definition of the dictionary. Now, the individual should not lose their unique identity in order to contribute to the group. Diversity is accomplished when we accept everyone for who they are, and they contribute and what they contribute to the mission, not forcing them to change or comport to become puppets. We're not recruiting robots. We're recruiting people for who they are. So the Chaplain Corps facilitates this by advising the command whenever needed of the individual's importance and their contribution and the effect of the mission on religion, morals, ethics, morale. And a good chaplain is one that is not afraid to speak up when they see a bias or mistreatment. And every chaplain should strive to do what is right morally and ethically, even in the face of criticism. And one example is a leadership program that I collaborated while assigned to a military intelligence battalion, where the platoon and company leadership learned about caring for their troops beyond statistics. So we created a care council. And that care council was an opportunity for leaders to proactively engage their soldiers and know what they're going through to anticipate their needs. This care council reduced the overall issues and challenges within our formation. And we went from reacting to emergencies and ideations and legal problems and so on to proactively providing the resources that our troops needed to handle the stresses and reduce destructive behaviors. This care council model, which was embraced and promoted by our brigade command sergeant major, enabled leaders at the lowest level to interact with their soldiers personally and to reduce a monotonous bureaucracy that is common with counseling or paperwork. We were able to brief our leaders up on what mattered and keep an eye out on those who needed assistance.
That's awesome. That's really great. And so I think in a lot of ways the things that you're talking about, I mean, they resonate, especially within the Marine Corps, because both the commandant and the assistant commandant both spoke about diversity, not as a sort of political talking point, that's just inundated with statistics and data, but they're talking about thinking and the advantage that we have over our threat competitor, our peer competitors, our threat competitors is that we're not this sort of monolithic, homogeneous organization that only has like one way of thinking, one doctrine that everyone adheres to, and that everyone thinks the same, acts the same, speaks the same, that we take our collective experiences and we celebrate those because it's looking at the problem set from the various angles is what's going to give us that edge over our competitor. And so I think a lot of what you're saying, and I'd love to hear that you feel like the Chaplain Corps is an enabler of this, so that, because to be quite honest with you, having been a battalion executive officer and having been a company commander, you do get so focused on mission that you lose sight of the fact that, well, the mission can only really be accomplished if you're using every asset and every tool at your disposal and maximizing its output. And so I think I'd love to hear that the Chaplain Corps and the chaplain as a key advisor is someone that facilitates that.
Absolutely, and the opportunity, and I've been to quite a few different types of battalions, from engineers to military police to intelligence, and so on. And I saw the different command styles, for lack of another way of putting it, the command climates.
Right.
And the good ones took the time, whether it was at a company level, platoon level, or at battalion or squadron level, where they took the time to sit and discuss the troops' needs, not just the mission. I won't forget this, and I know we'll take out this particular sentence, I'm going a little bit off script, but I remember one unit where the company commander said, "Why are we leaving to this? We were going to do table 8s, which is a type of a fire exercise." And the company commander said, "Why are we leaving on a Saturday morning? We could leave on Monday morning. We just leave 5 o'clock in the morning on Monday and we'll set up the tents and call it a day. Why do we need to leave on a Saturday when it's a day off? Let the troops be home and be with their families."
Right.
That little difference. Why do we need to, every time that there's a readiness exercise, why do we need to do it at 3 a.m? That particular company commander said, exercise is that the ball could drop at any moment. Fine, the ball could drop at 3 in the afternoon too.
Yeah.
The exercise doesn't have to always be at 3 in the morning or at a Saturday morning. It could be at any time. So really, that made a big difference. And we saw it with the attitude of the troops. The troops wanted to excel when they were treated properly. So this particular, what I'm sharing with you, I don't know if you're going to include it or not, but this is just my experience.
No, I love the anecdotes. I mean, to be quite honest with you, it really is what's giving, sort of your witness. It's giving it some real teeth. And so, because it's not just a matter of like, well, here's what doctrine says, or here's what theology says. It's like, no, this is a lived experience.
Right.
And I think that's extremely valuable. Like we talk about on the show all the time, is like storytelling. I mean, stories matter. And people's experiences matter, and we are, humans we communicate through story. Yeah, sure, you could sit here and give me an after action report, and that's all well and good, but that doesn't really resonate until we get that anecdotal sort of experiential, lens that you're seeing the world through.
And one of the other things we found with the podcast is, everyone's got a story to tell, whether they realized or not. And this is a really great venue for people to be able to tell their story. And as Vic often says, to take ownership of their story. So we're glad you're sharing your stories with us.
Well, looking back then on your career, and I know I'd read in some previous interviews of yours that had you known about the Chaplain Corps when you were 19, that you would have signed up then. But there's a certain, I think, maturity, and especially hearing the way that you're speaking, you being at the age that you were, on the crest, cresting 30, having a ton of experience in the civilian sector, in the theological sector. Do you feel like that time, that maturation process was an asset to you, or would you like to still go back and sort of siphon that youthful energy that you had when you were 19, 20 years old?
So this is a double-edged sword because there's no price tag on experience.
Right.
The best schools cannot teach experience. Experience tests a person's mettle, and it builds a resilient mind and attitude. So to answer the question, on the one hand, the youthfulness would allow me to run more, to experience the military and service to our country earlier, but at the same time, there's no price tag on experience. So this is something that my opinion, military schools teach doctrine. If they were to teach and change their style from the current classroom model to an experience-based model, and understand that not every soldier is destined to be a commander or destined to be a general officer or command sergeant major. And the training would be hands-on and build on the experience of the individual. Teach them the basics and allow for trial and error in a training environment, which is a safe environment, to build the individual to become the best they can be. Learning tactics from a book does not equate to practical tactics. Experiencing the tactics allows a person to build muscle memory. I could read all day about the proper posture for push-ups, but it will be meaningless until I do the actual push-up.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind, I do want to, allow me just for a moment to talk about some personal experience about it. And so when I was 18, I failed a particular critical exam, a religious exam, and I felt like a failure. I spent a long time learning it. It was a 3-part exam. I passed the first 2 with flying colors, top of the class. The 3rd part, I failed. And I wanted to give up. And my mentor spoke to me. And he suggested other approaches and solutions. And that was the moment that set me on the path, actually, to volunteer of myself as a medic at the time and an ambulance corps and join in the service of a community, using the example that you cannot expect a fish to climb a tree. Every person that has what they're cut out to do, what they excel at. So the sages teach us, Mikol melamdai hiskalti. A person should become wiser. And literal translations, I become wiser from all of my teachers. And the Baal Shem Tov, who was a sage that lived approximately 400, 500 years ago, expanded on the topic by saying that everything that one sees in life is shown to them to learn from that or to act upon it. So each time I face a challenge or situation that I don't understand, I discuss it with my mentors. I gain clarity and a perspective beyond mine to decide how to move from there. So every obstacle is an opportunity for a miracle to be revealed. To add to that, and talking about mentors and experiences, I was lucky that the rabbinical school that I went to encouraged us, based on the sage's teachings, of a Selech Harav, which literally translates make for yourself a mentor, which is a statement in the ethics of our fathers, that our school taught us to reach out and make a mentor for ourselves. And I recommend that the mentor should be someone that understands the unique circumstances that you are facing, someone that you could connect with, someone that would listen carefully and provide you guidance. This opportunity is an opportunity for the individual to both see their challenges from another lens, and to not only be tunnel vision on how to solve their challenge, but rather look at other options. If a door closes, there might be another door right next to that's open. If you're not focused on that, you're not open, not opening your vision, you may not see it. In addition to that, I just want to just quickly talk about it, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe points out that we must contribute at each level to accomplish the mission. So you mentioned before about the human aspect and the aspect of human nature and so on. This also translates to mentorship. A general officer cannot win a war on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Neither can a private. They must work together. The general at the strategic level cannot forget about the tactical contribution of the private. And the private, while they may not understand the whole picture from a strategic level, they must know that their contribution is vital for the strategic plan. My daughter loves Band of Brothers, and there's one statement over there when General Taylor responds to the German demand of surrender.
He says nuts.
Nuts. What did he do to the private? Imagine if the general would be fighting the war on their own, or the privates would be fighting the war on their own. That dichotomy, that connection will be gone.
Yeah.
That must be tied in together. So the individual alone can impact their immediate area, but still, when combined with the team's effort and with the guidance of their general officers or their mentors personally, their reach now becomes a greater reach, and they grow. And in last week's snowstorm, as we saw here in Virginia, we noticed something interesting. Just like a single snowflake is unique and on its own, it would melt and disappear. Even the strongest blizzard must start with that single snowflake.
Mm-hmm.
And although each snowflake is fragile, their power becomes immense when they stick together.
Yep.
They could even shut down the I-95 for 72 hours.
Yeah. Or create a snowman that won't melt on my front lawn.
Point taken. So this is what I'm saying about the ability of the individual could be maximized and taken to a level that is greater than ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that totally ties in with what you were talking about with diversity, that it's not about necessarily pluralism. I know pluralism is a policy that we want to have, but it goes beyond that, and it goes about celebrating those differences and those viewpoints and that thinking that is going to make us a stronger unit and community, and that the chaplains are a tremendous asset in maximizing that cohesion.
Absolutely. So talking about that is one of the biggest things that we could do is to continue learning
and to listen, right?
Yeah, to listen to everyone, to listen to the needs. One example, and I'm just going to use this as a catapult to one of the biggest successes that I saw in the military. For example, when I was stationed at Fort Leonard Wood, we advertised Yom Kippur services, the holiest day of the Jewish year. And to our surprise, on the eve of the holiest day of the year, every trainee showed up with a battle buddy to our services. And the battle buddies were not Jewish. The drill sergeants wanted to ensure that the Jewish troops observed the holiday properly. So they instructed a battle buddy to be with them for the duration of the holiday, to allow them, to enable them to practice their faith. Another area of success that I've seen is when leaders take the time to learn, they take the time to listen, and they accommodate, even if they don't necessarily understand the intricacy of the request. They try their best. one example from a movie is in Hacksaw Ridge when Andrew Garfield and his character requests a religious accommodation, and initially, not only is the command not receptive, but they treat him negatively.
Right.
But then, even though the commander did not understand the intricacies of the request, he figured out a way, a common ground to allow it, to allow the character to serve. I'm saying the character, historically, it's a true story, to allow the soldier, Richard Dawson, to serve in with his faith, to continue serving as a medic, even though he wasn't carrying a weapon, or in the case to observe his Sabbath and so on in a proper way. It is possible to find common ground.
That's an amazing story about the battle buddies among the trainees at Fort Leonard Wood. How startled were you to see that, or what did that propel you through your fast? That give you some extra? I'm not sure what the word is here. How did that affect you as you were going into such a solemn and holy day?
Inspiration. Even though the battle buddies had an opportunity, they didn't have to sit through the service itself. They came there, but they had the opportunity if they wanted to sit on the side, outside of the service, so they're not forced to worship a different faith of their own. Some of them chose to stay in the room. But what's fascinating about this is there was a gentleman, elderly gentleman, who before the holiday, I was sure that he would, just because of maybe my assumption combined with his age and so on, I was sure that he would not necessarily observe the fast and so on. But at the conclusion of the fast, he, during the Havdalah service, when we conclude the fast with a ceremonial blessing over a cup of wine, and then we could break the fast, the solemn day, this gentleman was standing there with his cup, and I noticed that his hand is shaking. So I turned to him and I asked him, "Did you truly fast the whole day, 24 plus hours?" And he tells me, "Yes. When I could see these young soldiers and their battle buddies in the room, and they're fasting and they're praying and they're, truly immersed in this solemn day. I, that was born to a Jewish mother, should sit by and not." That was his words to me at the conclusion of the holiday. And
Wow.
This kind of caps that particular experience to where I was truly inspired. That holiday really gave me the drive, I should say, to ensure that every holiday is, regardless of whether it's a major holiday or a minor holiday, is observed, an opportunity for the soldiers, the Marines, the sailors, the airmen, whoever wants to attend our services is able to.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful. Well, Rabbi, thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful, and it's such a great addition to this series. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really apologize for some of the technical difficulties we had early on, but I'm so glad that we stuck with it because it was totally worth it.
I do have a question for you, though.
Oh yeah, sure. I have a response. I don't know if I have an answer.
What was your best day in the Marine Corps?
Oh, my best day. Okay, you flipped the script. Jeez. My time as a company commander was so amazing. It's hard to pinpoint maybe a single day, but oh gosh, my best day, huh? Yeah, I think gotta say when we were in Iraq in 2007, 2008, and I was able to get off. I told my Marines I was going to be the first one in, the last one out, and so when I stepped off the plane, last one, and everybody came home alive. That was my best day in the Marine Corps. And when we marched from the armory after having dropped off all our weapons We marched in formation to meet with our families, and I brought everybody in like football style, like hands in the middle, and I was just so proud of them because they're the ones who did that. It had nothing to do with me. I was just the guy in the chair, but I was just so proud of them, and because they did it for one another. I mean, of course, we did it because we wanted to help liberate Iraq from oppression, but at the end of the day, they did it for each other. I was just so proud of them.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank God that your Marines were able to return home.
Yeah,
Safely.
it wasn't for a lack of trying on the other side. I'll tell you what. But yeah, thank you for that question. That's awesome.
Sure.
I feel I'm so humbled right now. I don't even know what to say. But other than to say thank you again so much for this, it has been a real honor, a real treat. And we'll definitely look to get you back on the show at some future date if you'll have us.
Sure thing. I do have a personal story that happened to me. My life was saved in Afghanistan, and I believe it was a miracle. So for future podcast, maybe.
Yeah,
That's great. I can't wait to hear that story.
For all our listeners, stand by for that. That's a wonderful hook.
So, God willing, we'll be in touch again.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
And thank you very much, Rabbi. We really, as Vic said, we really appreciate your taking the time to talk with us today and share your insight and your stories and your wisdom with us. It was a treat for us, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. And although I'm not a Marine, Semper Fi, and go Army, beat Navy.
Oh.
Well, the Navy won this year. Maybe next year,
Yeah, there'll be another go at it.
All right.
But thank you so much, and have a blessed day.
Have a great week, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. I am Nick Wilson. That is Major Vic Rubel, U.S. Marine Corps retired. We have also heard the voices of or contributions from William Truding or Nancy Lichman, editors of Gazette and Leatherneck magazines, respectively. Opinions expressed in Scuttlebutt are just that, opinions, and do not represent any official stance of the MCA.